Strong Towns Langley represents a vision for a safe, livable, and inviting Langley. Our mission is to collaborate with residents and local government to make that vision a reality. So, on behalf of Strong Towns Langley, it's my pleasure today to get to speak with one councillor, Michael Pratt. Welcome, councillor.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. I really appreciate it.
Of course, yes. And now, should I keep calling you councillor or can I call you Michael?
You can please call me Michael. I haven't gotten used to that yet, especially at City Hall. So Michael's perfect.
All right. Well, Michael is currently completing a master's degree in urban studies. And at the age of 25, he's also now the youngest ever elected councillor in the Township of Langley, proving age is just a number. Yeah, so congratulations on your election. And thank you so much for chatting with me today. And I know it's already busy with budget documents and meetings about budget documents. So thanks for taking time out of your busy day.
Yeah, of course. Really happy to be here. And it's one of those things where I'm always happy to talk about streets. So it's no trouble at all.
Yeah, it seems like it's right up your alley.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Strong Towns Langley was really interested in a recent motion you brought forward to Township Council. I think that motion was entitled Safe Street Design.
Yes.
Now, I'm curious if you can let me know just a little bit about what safe street design means to you and why you brought that motion forward.
Absolutely. For me, the most challenging part about redesigning our streets to make them safer, not just for people who are driving, but pedestrians, cyclists, everybody who uses roads and streets. The biggest challenge is often getting past the counterintuitiveness of some of the necessary redesigns that we need. So when you tell people that actually it's better to have a really narrow street with parking on both sides that you can't actually really see the cars coming, to a lot of folks, it's still, that doesn't make any sense. But when you really kind of take a step back and you think about those windy Murrayville streets or Walnut Grove streets where people park on both sides, you can't see around the corner, so it forces you to drive slower, or things with things like having more distractions on the road. It sounds counterintuitive, but when you have center medians with trees that hang into the road a little bit, again, it causes those visual cues that make drivers typically slow down naturally without even thinking about it. So that was the kind of overall starting point of the motion, was to ease into the type of changes we need to make. Because I think one of the biggest challenges with local government is often we try and get ahead of ourselves, or we try and get too much done too quickly. So it's one of those things where trying to make tangible progress that people can adapt to and adjust and actually digest, so that we make our streets safer, but we're not, banning cars tomorrow.
Right. Well, some people will be relieved to know we're not banning cars tomorrow.
Exactly. I'm one of them. So it's they're going to be around for a while. Nobody worry. I don't want that one to come back to bite me.
Yeah, we won't start that rumor.
Excellent. Thank you.
So you mentioned medians with trees, I think you referred to, and then also on-street parking.
Yes.
And those are some things in the motion. Is there anything else in the motion? So
some of the things that we we're hoping to target with this motion, and I say we because while I was the sponsor of the motion and really kind of started the ball rolling, it was a collaborative effort with a lot of the other members of council, and especially there's members of council, Councillor Bailey, Councillor Martins, who are focused a lot on public safety, and so obviously street design comes big into that. And so working with them on, those compromises about, okay, well, we got to make sure that there's enough space still for emergency vehicles to get through. And so those kind of issues that when you're focused solely on the design, you sometimes miss. So that whenever I say we, I just refer to council as a whole. But some of the other things we're making life easier and more, I'll say, enjoyable for pedestrians. So for myself, I live in Willowbrook, and so very car-oriented neighborhood still. But on the other hand, it's still one of the more walkable neighborhoods if you live in it, because you have a lot of the services and amenities, the things people want to get to. So a couple of the ways that I looked at how we could make life a little easier for pedestrians would be what we kind of called advanced pedestrian travel permission, which is a long way of describing when the walk symbol comes on before the light changes for
Right.
traffic. So there's one example in the township that comes to mind. It's intersection at 197 and Willowbrook Drive. So if you ever are a pedestrian there, or if you're ever a vehicle or a driver, you'll notice that the pedestrian walk symbol comes on about 2-3 seconds earlier than the light changes to green for the traffic. And what that does is it just lets the pedestrians enter the intersection so that they're actually visible. So
Right.
there's less of a chance of, a driver trying to turn right on the red, sneak in and hit the pedestrian who's just coming into the intersection because they're already in there. They're already visible. So that's one of the changes that we're working on. And I should say that this motion was passed back in December. Obviously, there's a lot in it, so staff are still working through it. And the other pedestrian improvement was something you see in really big cities, and Vancouver has it in most of the neighborhoods now, where pedestrian walk symbols come on automatically. You don't have what everybody in the kind of urban world refers to as a beg button anymore.
Right.
So that's one of those things where if the light just changes and you're allowed to go, you can, they talk about stories in New York, right, where if a good pedestrian plans their route properly, they never have to stop walking because the light is always allowing them to go. So some of those minor improvements to make life easier for pedestrians so that we can start to encourage more people actually walking.
That sounds great. I think COVID was helpful in starting the revolution to get rid of beg buttons. So hopefully we can do that here in the township.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's one of those things. It's an unintended consequence of some things that where you find allies in unexpected places. So public health officials now hate bug buttons, and so it's great.
Right. And germaphobes alike.
Exactly.
Awesome. So do you know what happens next? Like, when will this come back to council, and how can we sort of keep on top of what happens?
So what will likely be happening is we'll see a report back to council from staff, whether on all 4 of them clauses at once or individual different pieces, and then the policy changes that are required for each one. So specifically the first clause, for instance, that will require changes to the subdivision and servicing bylaw that affect the actual standards of road design that developers, that the city have to follow. So that'll be likely one of the more policy-oriented changes, whereas, eliminating beg buttons in Willowbrook and Willoughby at the major intersections and the pedestrian travel allowance, those are more technical changes that the actual utilities department will have to kind of figure out as well. So the other one that was a big piece, and this was actually something I worked directly with the mayor on in the last clause, was the street parking on urban arterials. For instance, the big one that comes to mind is once 208th Street's done, and you have 2 travel lanes in either direction. Obviously, during the day, during rush hour, important to still have the enough capacity for vehicle flow. But at night, we hear all the time about parking challenges in Willoughby, and a lot of the time you're trying to have people over for dinner or whatever it is, or you're just trying to park and find a spot to park your car overnight. It's a challenge. And so why don't we go towards the model that they have in Vancouver, for instance, on Broadway, which is one of the busiest streets in North America, where after a certain time, parking is allowed. And so we'll hopefully be able to free up some more parking for people. And at the same time, during the evening, when we know, for instance, I grew up in Murrayville, I could tell you very frequently how many times you could hear people racing down Fraser Highway in the middle of the night when there's no other traffic there. And because when you think of Fraser Highway or 208th Street or 200th Street, when there's no cars on it, it's a highway. So when we add parking back to the street, you're going to be hopefully disincentivizing that kind of behavior, which is a lot safer. So we are looking forward to that one being implemented for sure, because it kind of solves a few different problems.
Yeah, totally. Well, that's great. I think obviously Strong Towns Langley will be following this and in touch with you. And so either your social media or our social media. I'm sure we'll be keeping on top of all the updates and
Absolutely.
getting people out to support it
Yeah, please
in the
do. And
future.
I'll make sure to post about it when it comes back to council and things like that. I know I haven't been terribly active on social media as of late, but
You're forgiven.
something about getting in and getting my feet wet. It's been a lot. So
That's a lot to start out for sure. Yeah.
yeah,
Well, thank you so much. Speaking of that, it being a lot, thank you so much for your time and for your support to make Langley more livable and safe.
my pleasure. And thank you for what your organization does. And the advocacy is a huge piece. And I think that it'll be important to kind of normalize for people the type of improvements that make a city better. And it comes with advocates like you. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Talk to you
Awesome.
soon.
Thanks, Cheryl.